Ladies and gentlemen, it's the last call for the big boys table. We're setting up shop in another location. To be continued, question mark, is the title. So what's going on, Mesk? How you doing?
I'm doing terribly. It's,
A lot
it's
of
already an
chaos.
awful day. I
Yeah.
fucked up my right foot really badly. I think it was from carrying shit. And I got it looks like a white line that goes across the top of it between where the ankle would be and then the flat of the foot on top of it. It burns like hell. Touching it hurts like hell.
Huh.
Can hardly walk. And today is going to be a hard day. Today I'm going to be taking apart everything in my system. Probably later in the day. We have people coming over. Probably in a couple hours. Like, basically, the second we drop this off is just going to be madness. And then tomorrow is the actual move, which is also going to be madness, because it's going to be hard as hell to get my grandmother out of the house. She says she doesn't want to go in the morning, which is when everything happens. So who the fuck knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, that's going to be a whole production, I imagine.
Then I'm going to be dark for a while because I won't have internet there, and I think I should have it later in the week, but we will see.
Well, there you go. I mean, I'm glad we were able to get to episode 69, but I also, in many ways, and maybe this is just how life always works, maybe every time you're at a crossroads or about to, do something really big that's like life-changing and circumstance-altering, you might feel like, wait, if I just had a bit more time, I could do more epic things. Because we are kind of on the precipice of some epic things, right? Like, you think about your work with Apex X, think about the state of CMBW, the casting. We had just yesterday, at the very end of Fraudarchy, decided, hey, let's just do an impromptu fucking co-cast. And I thought it was pretty fun, pretty neat, novel, to have two people talking it over. So, like, stuff like that, you just, you have all of these experiences where you think, oh, yeah, this could be a real cool thing if I had time to, like, really get stuck into it and do a lot of it and, just practice it or whatever. But you don't really get a chance to do any of that to a high level of quality or
I don't get a chance to
frequency.
do fucking anything
Yeah.
here. Like, holy shit.
You
It's
just
just
get
been
home.
crazy for 10 fucking years.
And that's the one thing we did talk about, I think, in the last episode, that we hope, fingers crossed, that that it's not going to be exceedingly stupid once you get settled in and the going dark period concludes. Maybe you exit the age of stupid and enter a new age, a new legacy, a new void. There you go. But it's definitely up in the air, I guess. We don't really know too much. You were saying earlier that at least some basic things like your air quality should improve, right? So
I hope.
There are a few
We're
things
next to a highway, so you never know, right?
right, yeah. Might be. I wonder if it'll be like when you were there, since it's next to a highway. You said that you like moved around the house and like you did it. You tried to like do a couple of quick audio checks of like if I shout, does it like carry or whatever. But
No, I never shouted or anything like that. I was just listening.
oh yeah, okay. So you're just listening around.
I didn't really hear the highway that much.
Yeah.
So
That was going to be my
I
obvious
don't.
question. I if there's like a lot of honking or something, maybe it's a bit different. But
Well, I don't think that there's honking because we've outlawed honking because it hurt the feelings of Trudeau.
yes, that's true. I didn't think about that. Yeah, if you honk, you get cavalry charged. So
Yeah, basically. You get executed on the spot.
what the fuck is wrong with this country of yours?
Everything's wrong with this country.
Jesus. Well, is there I know you're often when you're in the moment, in the middle of all this shit, you're just like, whoa, all this shit's happening, and kind of in a whirlwind, and just like doing your best to just stay with it and like cope with that or whatever. But has it given you any thoughts of like, here are some things that like projects I was working on or things I was doing, and like here's like what I can do next? Because one of the things that you said was obviously you're not sure if you'll be able to continue casting or like to what degree that casting will look like. Like, is it going to be ASMR casting? Is it going to be something quieter or more reserved? And, like there's that, but then there's also like, do you hope that, or do you suspect that maybe you'll be able to get more work done in other things? Like there's obviously, if you have a more quiet and less like insane living situation, then maybe you can get more work done in like Unreal, working with like the level design and the blueprints and all the stuff that you have to do for Apex X. Like, are there anything like that where it doesn't require you to be super loud or noisy or whatever, that you still would be able to do in that sense? Because if you're gonna have internet and you have a working computer, like, it sounds like you can still get work done on the project at least, right?
Continuing work on Unreal and D&D are probably the only things I'm really gonna do. I've given up on other projects, really. Like, I had my whole life to work on this stuff, and that was in better circumstances, and I really didn't get a lot of stuff done. So I'm not going to be like starting any new projects. I would have liked to have caught up on the now decade-long list of castovers and stuff that I've had submitted. I have a full run of Nier Automata from Drunk Swedishman. HKS ran DMC,
Oh, right, yeah.
and the Demon Souls emulated run, which is just insane. And I just have probably like thousands of hours of stuff that is untouched. I have an XXE that is like 20 minutes in that hasn't been touched in years. I have the WoW Rant 2 videos from way back that a month or two ago did some processing on, but needs more editing. I would like to knock some of those down if possible. Castovers, again, we don't know about, but there's stuff that's already like pre-casted that is not worked on. I don't know about those though, because part of what burned me out on those in general is just really, really tedious and time consuming to go through that. And I don't usually have the time. So if I have more time, then maybe it's a little more likely I'm going to get to that. Beyond that, it's really like I can't actually even launch Unreal right now because we tried to update it and it ran into some kind of incompatibility with my system, and HKS can run it, but I can't. And,
okay.
It's the error I get is a shader pipeline crash, which those ones are very hard to debug. So, he doesn't really know what to do, and I don't know what to do. So he just kind of like threw up his hands, and I don't have time to even think about messing around. I can't even revert changes on the fucking GitHub thing. It just throws me just vague errors. So just like, fuck it. We'll just not do anything in Unreal for a while, I guess. Not like I have a choice at the moment.
Yeah, that's like one of those really annoying situations where, I mean, you're more used to feeling that in modding a game that's actually still being updated, like when StarCraft 2 just wipes all your fucking files or whatever, Or like, the more recent one that I've had is back like maybe a year and a half ago, I was working, or maybe just a year ago now, I was working on a Risk of Rain 2 mod. And it just, an update came out, and now every mod in the entire fucking games library is broken, and everybody has to manually update it. It's like, wait, what? This is actually a normal practice? Like, this happens?
Yeah, it's very common, yeah. Like, that happens with Skyrim, and every single mod is dependent on a third-party scripting thing, and every single update breaks that. So, whenever there's updates in the newer versions, it just snaps everything in half. So... yeah, that how it be. Yeah, it can be frustrating, but it's also part, like, we're running on cutting edge shit.
Yes.
And I think what's crashing is actually, like, it's not my project, it's the whole editor. So they've done something, one of these changes. I think I might know what it is, but I can't even revert it. Like I said, because Git won't even fucking revert it for me. I think it's like some optimization or something like that. Like, yeah, I run into issues more than a few times where either it's due to my old video card or due to old drivers that I actually run into issues. So staying on top of drivers is actually important in many cases. But that's not the case for this. So I don't know. Nothing I can do about it. One thing I tried to do some voice acting for Captain Sneed and another AO unit for that, and then this is probably gonna be the last of my voice acting for good. Beyond that, I mean, it's just what I'm really hoping I can do is finally rest.
Yeah, no kidding.
I have, like, almost all my toes are fucked. The arthritis in my hands is really bad now. The picking and carrying up stuff has just been really horrible for that. My finger, the joint on it got fucked up just like my toe did. My knees are horrible, and now I got this other injury. I don't know if it's a sprain or if I actually just flat out fractured my foot from carrying stuff that's too heavy. I don't know. The last move fucked me up really badly. It fucked up my back, and my back is really bad now. So and then it's just been like nonstop. I've never really had a day's of rest in years and years and years and years. I've never been able to grieve for my cats. I've never been able to do anything. It's just been nonstop breakneck insanity. I don't think that's going to change. But at this time now, I would be doing yard work. We wouldn't be having this conversation. I'd actually be doing yard work right now if we were still here. I came out here yesterday and there was about 60 ants piled up coming out of the holes. I just took out the fucking spray and just gassed a whole lot of them. And this, like, it'll be nice to not have to deal with those anymore, at least for a little while. I don't actually know what the pest control policies on an apartment is, but it's a business, not an individual. They're less likely to do really stupid things with it. So I'm hoping, right? I'm really crossing my fingers. So one thing I did do is I did order a new front end.
Okay.
There was a front end that was recommended by a streamer, an associate of somebody I've talked to for years. The specific model that she recommended turned out to actually be quite expensive, like $200. And but it has an external power into it, so I'm hoping we avoid USB issues. Because like the Focusrite that I used to use before is actually used or was used by one of the well-known streamers. I don't know. I think it was either Joel or Vinny or something like that. And they had non-stop issues with it too. So like the issues with those ones I've been having, they're wide known. I don't think the M audio is as wide known, but I did, like, everywhere I did research on, there was issues with this stuff. So having someone who has used this very regularly for a long time gives me some hope. If not, then whatever. Finally ordered the power bars I wanted to get a while ago. Those also turned out to be more expensive than I had hoped. But they're also surge protectors, so it's kind of why they're expensive. I have an issue with my audio that was pointed out to me by a drunk Swedish man a while ago that has actually lasted for 10 or more years, where there's this it can be like 5 or 6 times a segment where you'll hear this strange distortion in the microphone. Audio is very subtle, but it is there. And this is endured across countless hardware setups, computers, microphones, whatever, and software for that matter. So it really is like just agnostic to everything. And I've always just wondered, could it be like the power bars I'm using that they're giving like unclean power? And that is just enough that you pick it up in the microphone or something like that. So that's always been a theory of mine. Of course, there's a lifetime of work on here. Many lifetimes of work if you consider that I'm holding on to a lot of stuff that you can't even get on the internet anymore. A surge protector or something like that is something I've needed for a long time because we have constant power outages all the time. And, just one bad power surge from that can just fuck everything up. So I've always been terrified of that. So it was about time to do something about that, especially when you're moving into an apartment and you have no idea where you're walking into in terms of, like, how often does the power go out in an apartment? What does the infrastructure look like? What are other people trying to run on the network? It was just something that needed to be done. So, and then the other thing I'm going to do when I get there, actually probably one of the first things I'm going to do once I get set up again, is there's some old recordings that are not currently available on the FTP. I think like the original Killzone 2 recording, the original Viking recording, the first Darksiders, maybe like there's a couple of the really like first initial recordings that for some reason I don't have on my drives. I don't know why, but I have a very old spin up hard drive that they're on and I think will still work. So I'll try to yank those off and maybe some of the earlier XXEs or whatever is on there. So just kind of like, trying to take a step back and reassess where we're at and what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. Casting is definitely not going to happen for a long time. I will scout out the actual recording conditions and try to figure out an acoustic solution, but this is just too draining mentally. Like, I'm just so tired of all this bullshit I've had to deal with for so fucking long, and I know it's just going to get worse when we move because my grandmother is just a bitch. And dealing with her is a pain in the ass. And even after we move, I have to be one that ferries around because we're going to move there. And right now, the gas is set to like their site says that they are discontinuing service at the new place because that's what it's registered to, and it says this is the final bill, and that's really confusing because they're supposed to transfer the service to that place, not cancel it outright.
Okay.
And their website says we don't owe anything, and then they sent her a bill a day ago for like $300 something, and I don't know, but it's going to be a pain in the ass. So yeah, the hardest work is going to be moving my system, actually. I don't trust anyone to do that but me. And I was hoping I didn't put out my legs so bad I couldn't actually carry the case. But now I'm in a situation where I probably shouldn't be carrying anything at all. I probably shouldn't be going up the stairs at all, but I kind of have no choice. So, and then I told you guys about this on Fraud Night, too. Fucking landlord decided to come over. Right. I had a D&D game on Friday night, so we managed to squeeze in an SS session on Friday night. And right before the session is going to start, the landlord phones and is like, "Oh, I'm coming over to look for renovations." Because what he's going to do, he says he's bringing in a family, but he's just going to pretty it up and then just rent it out again, or sell it. And he brings over a bunch of other guys with him in the middle of my fucking D&D game while we're moving. And like my grandmother told him, you could just be patient and wait like 2 or 3 days and we won't even be here. And it'll be all cleaned up and ready to go. And no, he's got to do it now. Got to do it now. So they are here for over an hour. Just right beside me. And many times it sounded like they were arguing with each other in Hindunese. And I think that they just realized that maybe they can't do a basement suite or something down here, because when we had that walkthrough way years back when there were initial landlords were selling this place, every single person wanted to turn it into a basement suite and subdivide it. That's actually illegal. The zoning is not for subdivision. The zone's actually, when you look at the zoning for structures, they tell you what they're for, single family homes or otherwise, and it's technically illegal to do that, but this is Canada. Who's going to stop them? You got 50 people living in a household here. So, but there was something in the structure, the way the pipes or something is done that I think prohibits that. I'm not really sure what. No one ever explained it to me, but I think they had their eyes on the double dipping the $4,000 rent, because you could definitely do that now. But they couldn't, and I think that's what it was, because they left kind of downtrodden. So. Meanwhile, they're like knocking things over, breaking things, getting in my way, distracting me. It just was an absolute damn mess. So yeah, that was exciting. So it's just never a fucking day's rest.
Yeah, well, in that case, you're just trying to sit there and do your fucking, run your D&D game and plan for the move. And yeah, at least you won't have that happening anymore.
Oh, hopefully. The new place sounds extremely strict. They have rules like you can't put things on doors, you can't touch the blinds. I imagine they have monthly walkthroughs. I'm not sure actually, but they're really, really, really restrictive about, like, if you ever lose your keys and you get stuck outside, they actually charge you like $50.
Oh, so, yeah, that'll be a
there's a lot of
locksmith that gets paid or whatever.
No, that's just to have someone come and open the door for you, not even a locksmith.
Oh.
Because it's like somebody inside the building, right?
What the fuck?
So,
well,
yeah, it's actually just freaking insane. Like, don't get locked outside. That's probably not going to happen to me. But, like, if it does, then you get dinged a massive amount of money. So, I don't know about anything else at this time, but I have a feeling that it's going to be treading on very, very, very thin ice if I decide to do casting, after all. So, yeah, it is what it is. And I don't think things will get easier. I'm pretty sure they're going to get harder. But it's like you got nowhere to go. You got no choice. And there are no real alternatives that are really going to be any better for you. So it's I think that will be the place that both of us die, actually. I think we will never leave that place. Or we'll just end up in another similar situation for whatever reason. And, to me, there was 2 things that really mattered, which was like my cats and then like having a home. Like, I've spent all my life juggling fucking houses and being at the whims of landlords and other assholes. And, like, every person should have a home, right? Like, it's one of the most basic fundamental things to exist in the world is to have a place that you can call your own, to have stability, to have a place where you belong. And when you're renting on houses, you kind of like live in this fantasy, right? Like, it's only one step from you being the owner. It's like you could be a landlord. You could own the place. You can kind of live in that fantasy because you're already in a house. But when you get sent to the gallows, the prisons basically, of living in an apartment with like 1,000 other people you don't even know and can't trust at all, especially here in the crime capital. It's like that. Any sense of illusion you might have been able to delude yourself and just completely disappears. And you realize just how fucked you really are. Like this house is like half the size of the last house. It's 3 times as fucking expensive. Actually, more so when you account the utilities. The apartment, the utilities may be cheaper, but the rent's really not any better. And it's like a fifth the size of this place. So what's going to happen, I think, when we move there is we're actually going to have to get rid of half the stuff that we've hung on to, which we've thrown out all of our furniture. My stuff went to storage a couple days ago. And
you actually managed to wrangle some storage?
One of my grandmother's relatives offered to store stuff for me. So I took stuff to her place. And that was like my dragon statues, my grandmother's eagles, stuff like that. And just the really expensive stuff that you're trying to hang on to. And that I wasn't able to take all of it though. So I've still got some here. And then I've got my desk, my computer, some hardware, and that bookshelf next to me that you may have seen in a coffee hour or two. And that's kind of really about it. I threw out the keyboard. We had the junkers come a couple days ago. So I've thrown out my MIDI keyboard. I've thrown out all my VHS stuff I was hanging on to hopefully one day remaster. And other hardware. And probably about pretty much half of everything I had as of a year ago. So still got too much stuff for this apartment. Absolutely. It's going to be a mess. So I don't even know if I'm even going to be able to fit the desk and the bed in the same room. This could be really awkward. So I guess if we're able to do a cast in the next Big Voice Table, there'll probably be a very, 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 very long rant about that.
Oh yeah, all of the here's what happened. Here's where we are, right? And, if you've been following the saga, the Canadian lore, then you kind of know shit's fucked and
Shit's
stupid.
Fucked.
So yeah, I mean it's just a general sentiment shared amongst pretty much everybody here at the No Frauds Club that it would be nice if you just were able to, like you were saying, if you could rest, if there was less insanity, right? So, there's certainly a chance, I think, that things go a pleasantly surprising way once you're actually through the like this is like going over the hill, and then hopefully it's smooth sailing down it afterwards. Is sort of my vibe, but you would know the situation better than I would. It's just all I can offer really from the outside is an optimistic take and outlook. But I think the biggest thing that's going to be an improvement to your quality of life, unsurprisingly, is going to be you finally being able to get some help to fix your feet or something, or whatever.
Oh, that won't happen. No,
you just gotta.
I'm on my own for all of that.
Yeah. Well, what I mean is you can. In theory, when there's less time of insanity, your body can actually start the repair process.
Oh, yeah, I hope, but, my grandmother is just going to work me to the bone, just moving everything around over and over and over again, so, because that's how she is. It's just, oh, you don't do anything. Now go adjust my bed and make my food.
Classic.
Every fucking, hour or two. It's just crazy shit. And if I say my foot fucking hurts, she's like, oh, you complain too much.
Useful.
And she just sits there and does nothing.
I mean, it's one thing if you're actually incapable, but it's just what is I don't know.
Oh, her attitude's always been
Yeah,
shit.
the little I've known from what you've said before has not colored her in a pretty light. I'll say that.
She is of the belief that stress doesn't exist.
Right, and depression too, right, or something like
Yep. Oh, what do you have to be stressed about?
that.
Gee, I wonder. Golly, let me get like the fucking Buddha here to figure that out.
Yeah. How long do you have, lady? let me regale you with some tales.
Speak of the devil. Speak of the devil.
What were we even continuing about?
I was gonna tell you what my immediate plans are, I guess.
Oh, okay. Let's hear.
All right. So, other than trying to fix Unreal and getting that working or whatever, basically in Unreal, I've been holding off the really hard work in part because of stress and everything else. And like I mentioned before, the last now 4 months has really been bug hunting and systems improvement and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of building the building blocks again. This stage we're going to do the major shit. So the major shit I want to get into is I want to get into control rig, which is kind of like the full body IK system, because that I've been told by one of Epic's authorized educators that this supposedly can allow you to do stuff like fix the hands issues I've had with female assets forever off of retargeting. It might let me be able to actually adjust animations as well. I mean, I've seen people selling animations built entirely with control rig, but is very, very complicated and hard to get into. I think you need to have some degree of animation knowledge beforehand. Whereas I've just presently and very recently been dealing with a third-party IK system just to handle like legs and shit. So there's that. There was something else. Oh, right. Trying to get in like the other more complicated stuff I mentioned way back, like the floating AI and stuff. We will probably do actual like major. Well, there's a lot of really major stuff like fixing the interface and the saving system right now. The master volume not working is a really weird one. I don't know about that. The saving not persisting when you close the game is weird. Putting in a retry button to immediately reload from the last save. There's like a little list of stuff that I have. For recordings, what I need to do, I have Final Fantasy 14 that I was doing tentatively throughout time. I lost about 5 hours of that last year due to that front end. So I've got a 5-hour segment, most of which was discussion about the game's economy and how Square fucked up everything because they always do. And I don't remember any of it, and I didn't even have a lot of context for it, and I don't remember that now because HKS had more context for that stuff than I did. So I think I'll need to like cut those segments out of the video, and then I was honestly halfway tempted just to release it with a corrupted video or audio, but I just can't even understand myself in it, so I doubt anyone else is going to be able to either.
Oh, it's that bad.
It's pretty bad. It basically, a lot of times when you run into issues with recordings, what ends up happening is you get like really slow or really fast because it like messed up the sampling rate. In this case, it messed up the sampling rate and it made it really slow, and then it truncated the extra data to make it fit the original length. So like there's just bits of audio just missing everywhere. It's so stupid. So yeah, it's just like really fucking mangled because there's just bits of audio missing everywhere. So sometimes you get no audio. In the case of the Dark Souls 2 segment, I had to recast over. Other cases, it just destroys it completely. And it's across 5 fucking hours. Like, it just stays fucked until you relaunch Windows Audio. And this was after a fresh computer restart too. So it had nothing to do with anything I was doing or had been doing. There was no like memory issues or whatever. It was just straight up fucked. So awful. So yeah, that and Dark Souls 2 actually, because the Final Fantasy 14 stuff can be, well, it's not really low key, but it's lower key than most stuff. Dark Souls 2, I wanted to do that prior to doing Elderp Ring, and I've heard really mixed stuff about Elderp Ring. In fact, most people I know who are From Software fanboys have had a lot of not good things to say about Elderp Ring, so that'll be interesting. It's also apparently extremely unfair, even by From Software standards of LMAO buggy shit, like man-eaters falling off the ledge and not actually dying. Those were long-term goals I wanted to get to. I would love to do Hogwarts Hazing too, because that's a good game that a lot of people like and are very fond of. So I know it's pretty much just going to be an absolutely garbage game, but there's no way I can't run that. Like
Yeah, come on.
Professor
This
Snape
is
has been one
Harry
of my
Potter
mascots
BDSM
forever.
fanatic himself. Like,
Yeah, I've got to get into that. So those are like my goals, is to if I get into casting, those will be what I'll be looking at doing. Red Pill Roundup for Apex, I did have ones recorded, but then stuff happened. It got delayed in the editing, and then other advancements were made, and it was like, well, now this is out of date. I got to re-record. But then I would end up like 2 or 3 hour long videos, and I was like, these are supposed to be summaries, not that long. But there was just a lot of little things to talk and demonstrate about, and then it just got canned entirely. So getting back to that and having an actual proper assessment to segue everything prior to this point, and then everything that comes after will be important for that and documentation. So finishing the Auto Win video series, I have the final probably 2 segments to do. One being the last sessions, and then the other one being the technical summary, which I have to use Photoshop to make really, really, really crude drawings for and MOI heads. So those are actually fairly significant video projects, probably about 4 or 5 hours a piece. So I do definitely have stuff lined up, but yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, I guess.
well, it's nice to know that, like, even when you do find the time to situate yourself and you feel like you can actually throw yourself at some more work, you have a couple of things on the list. Like we sort of talked about that last episode where I was explaining like some of the things that work really well for me is, especially lately, I've been really into the whole like, obviously have a list of things before you even sit down to work so that you can look through that list. But also like, most days these days I've just picked the one that I'm dreading the most, or the one that's the most difficult, or the one that's like the most arduous, and I've just been doing that first, and then I feel free the rest of the day because I can just everything else is super easy.
That's generally how I approach a lot of things, is get the most difficult part done first.
Yeah,
because once you've got that behind you, you're no longer constantly like looking over your shoulder asking, when do I have to do that?
Right, yeah. It's really funny.
That's why I moved down the air conditioners first, because they were the hardest thing. It was probably a mistake, though.
Right, well, sometimes it can get you, but for the most part, I think it ends up working out pretty well, so it's just a matter of whether or not it can be done in a good way. Like, you don't want to literally, you don't want to hurt yourself physically or whatever, but
yeah,
even then, sometimes it's at least like you don't have to do it later. So there's still a benefit to it. Yeah, I don't know.
That's why I would do the yard work in the morning too, because it's
the
hardest part of the day. It's very draining. It's better to get out there when it's still not like 50 Celsius. It might be like 30, and there won't be as many wasps out there. Right. So it's better just to do it.
What if you don't have yard work and then you walk outside for whatever reason? And it's not full of wasps and ants?
I don't know. That would be weird. I always like the wind and the night sky, but I can't like go out here because there's a very high chance of me getting attacked. And at the last place too, I don't really trust apartment grounds either because but I don't know. We do have a porch that I could sit on.
Yeah, there you go.
It would be nice if I had like a rocking chair and a shotgun and a beer or something, but I can overlook a church and the highway. And there
you go.
I'm not sure which suite we got, but the ones I was looking at before that we were telling them we wanted, they're actually they're not really secluded because it is still densely populated areas, but they're not as densely populated as here. And where they're overlooking is not like you're not looking into like a busy like town or a whole bunch of people's yards or whatever. You got the highway in the background, but they're kind of not really there in your face. So I think just in general, that ambience will just be better. Like one of the main reasons why I think like having a home and having your own place is really important, because that's where mental health starts. Is your environment. You're shaped by your environment. So everything around you is really, 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 really important, because that's the ambience that's always in your peripheral vision. It's always in your peripheral hearing. It's always in the back of your mind. It's what's going on around you, what you're surrounded with. And if that's also chaos, if that's also like too many things going on, or in my case, like things cause me stress. Doors opening and closing, cars driving by, people talking, that causes me a ton of stress. I get panic attacks that just last eternally, and then the apnea starts, and then everything is already down to shit by that point. And you know, it's an apartment, so those are going to be a lot worse. But at least when you're going to be looking outside, it shouldn't be as bad, because I think a lot of the grounds actually get locked off, especially at night. So, if I can gauge that it's safer, it would be nice to be able to sit out there at night, and especially when it's hotter. If it actually gets cooler there, I don't know. That's the other thing too. Is like where I live right now, I'm surrounded by pavement, like all the way around except for my yard, and the building kind of like stands out on its own, and that means that 24/7 you are taking sun and heat from the sun, because the asphalt absorbs the heat, and then it releases the heat at night, so it just stays hot. And all of our neighbors have paved their lawns, or part of their lawns, so there's even more asphalt. I just can't imagine how hot their places have to be at the ground level, especially that they paved their fucking lawns to park like 50 different cars, and like the heat is just so awful, and you can't escape it. There's no shade or anything. You can't escape it. This building, you're in an apartment, so you only get the one side, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be getting the morning side. So when I was in an apartment, when I visited an apartment a couple of years ago, it was like 40 Celsius at 8 a.m. facing the morning sun. It was dreadful. It's dreadful like that here too, but the opposing side of the day, you shouldn't be getting as much. So I think the air conditioner should work a little bit better in a closed space too. In that case, having much smaller real estate to work with could be beneficial. It could be harder to air it out. Like there's just a lot of different factors, but it should hopefully be cooler in the summer. That's what I'm really hoping. That would mean that, yeah, it would be nice to be able to sit outside, and, maybe the other thing I don't like about this place too is very recently, well, this was always an issue, but very recently they changed the street lamps, and they put in like some pale LED light that is super bright. So anytime you look outside, it's like daytime on the road. It's really bright, and it really, really messes with you. Like I have to have blackout curtains in my windows, because the lights that were there before would shine right into your face. Mm-hmm. No matter where you're inside the room, if you had your window open at all, it just shine into your face. And now it doesn't shine into your face as much, but it ambiently illuminates everything in this really awful pale glow. And I know HKS is telling me that apparently they've had a lot of car crashes because of that, because the lights fatigue your eyes.
Yeah, of course.
So if you're driving out under it, it's really awful. There will be lamps at this place, but I don't think we're going to be sitting in front of a bunch of awful street lights. So that will be nice too. Hopefully it'll be a little darker at night.
The idea that you're going to do that, I don't know if any, from all of what I understand, it's really bad to constantly have lights on at night, like really bad for your body clock and stuff.
And yet you have all of our neighbors. Half of the houses have fucking floodlights on them. Vertical floodlights up and down that they leave on all night to fully illuminate their building. But all of them have lights on, and we talk again, just bright pale lights that shine out their windows like fucking suns. They leave them on all night long. You can see the lights through their windows. You can see them under their door cracks. Again, there was a guy across from us that was running cycling LEDs on his driveway for all night until very recently. I think they burned out or something. Like they just drown themselves in light pollution. It's just like it's bad enough that you're in a town, and you can't even see the night sky at all because it's just this glow. But the people willfully have lights on, just bright pale lights on all the time.
Insane. I don't know why anybody would opt into that.
It's horrible.
Yeah, I've been in I've lately had in the last couple of years got an interest in the whole like night sky in an area with no light pollution kind of deal, and it's actually quite breathtaking if you can get a chance to see stuff like that. Like I've only seen pictures, right, but actually seeing it in person is supposedly quite phenomenal, and I can't imagine how it wouldn't be when you really look at like how just how it is, right? It's like it's really insane to think about. Here's the stuff that we would normally see before all the light pollution, and now it's just like you got to go to fucking some area, some podunk town with no lights or whatever.
Yeah, it's really eerie too, because in the summer I've got the doors open, windows open, everything open, just trying to cycle air. It's just like trying to cycle hot air into warm air. And then you just realize like it's like 2 a.m. and it is still bright outside.
Yeah.
Because the horizon is super bright. And that's just because the light pollution is actually really crazy when you think about it.
Definitely not something I would ever recommend people opt into deliberately, like your fucking neighbors who are lunatics.
Yeah, that's just, I don't know, man. It's fucking nuts.
That is nuts. Well, nuts is also a good word to describe the general situation that you're in, so I guess it kind of all matches. But I'm personally holding out hope, fingers crossed, and all that shit. It is kind of weird that at the same time you're dealing with all this stuff, you're like, well, let me get some Unreal work. Oh, shit. So, like, at the same time, getting owned by that is like, well, when it rains, it pours.
Yeah, it's like, it's all I got, so that's what I keep trying to go back to, and life just keeps yanking me back by the hips and kicking me in the balls and saying, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, but why?
That's how it's felt for 10 fucking years now. Just like literally every week has had more dumb shit happen.
Yeah. The good part of the move, anyway, is that I have a sneaking suspicion that it will be like, see, you're sort of like shadowboxing whether it'll be good to like sit out in your porch or whatever, and you got to buy a rocking chair and a shotgun and a beer. But aside from that, I feel like you'll be pretty well equipped. I mean, when you have the downtime, right? And it's going to be, I don't know how long the process is going to take for you guys to get fully situated. It does sound like it's quite the fucking mess to actually move everything. And you were saying yesterday that, and earlier in this show actually, that you were trying to, like, you have to move your system and you're not sure how you're going to do that yet. And you,
I think I'm going to have like a cart, and I'm going to cart it out, and we're going to take that in a car, and movers are going to come tomorrow. They're coming at like the fucking crack of dawn,
right,
to take pretty much everything else. And it's basically just all going to be stacked in the center of the apartment. And from there, it's just going to be basically me doing stuff. So, probably more chaotic after that's going to be dealing with all the companies coming in to hook shit up. Like the phone, for example, the internet when that comes. The other thing about the internet is I'm running on a grandfathered plan that if I was to wager, I'd say it's probably like 15 years old. And it's become kind of prohibitively expensive because it's grandfathered, but they can increase the price of it. So right now I'm paying about $120 something Canadian, which is like $5 USD, for 3 Mbit upload, and it's not really that good. Also, I think the modem is starting to get really old, and also the infrastructure in this area here has proven to be really bad. Like, we tried to play Cosmonarchy, and there's so many times the game just comes to like a permanent fucking PowerPoint presentation because like the internet just starts like dying, and then it just keeps dying. Like the last couple of months was really bad. We had a little bit of ice for like a half a day.
Oh, right.
And our power is supposed to be underground, but every time that happens, it seems to fuck things up even more, where we start getting random power outages and the internet starts misbehaving. So I'm hoping the infrastructure in the other areas is newer than that. But I've actually, I'm going to be investing a little bit more into a modern internet. Now, this is an apartment, but I'm using my own line. They don't come with an internet plan, but they have a deal with another provider that I don't trust whatsoever because they're too closely associated with Bell and Rogers. And I use Shaw. So I'll be sticking with Shaw, and I'll be using actually a gigabit line. So I'm hoping that the internet will be a little bit faster, a little bit more reliable. And then that will be like, it'll be a lot better for like if I was actually doing active video work again. It takes me like an entire day normally to upload like 1 or 2 segments, depending on what it is. Like say Stray, for example, like it takes forever.
Oh yeah, even
And
for those CMBW casts you send me, isn't that
yeah,
like
it takes
an
a
hour or
long
something?
time. Like the audio for this, I'll send you. It takes me like an hour or two.
Wow.
Now it'll be a lot faster. So and then collaborating with HKS and having him help me with my project as well with Apex will also be a lot faster because I can just straight up send him huge chunks of the project or builds of Arbiter or whatever maps, and it will just be a lot faster. Like he can send me 100 gigs in like
You can
a couple
download it in a
hours,
reasonable
4 hours or
fucking
something
time.
like
Yeah.
that. So yeah, it's it'll just be hopefully a little bit more reliable. Just little things like that. The difference in the cost is basically the less money that I'll be paying for rent. It's not very much, but in a couple of years we can pay off the deficit for the movers, and I can afford slightly better internet. So it's still absolutely overkill. I'm actually paying more than HKS does for the same thing because I don't know. This town is really fucking stupid, and
You guys are kind of
you
local,
just
right? Like, because I know he's been over your house a few times before, right?
yeah, not as much anymore. He actually lives on a ranch now. He was telling me the other day about pigs and how pigs will just kind of like eat pretty much anything that goes near them, including chickens and hens.
Yes.
And so also he was telling me, this reminded me so much of Reddit. He was like, chickens really are just the dumbest things ever, and they're also like incredibly brutal. And I was like, yeah, that's just like Reddit.
Got him.
Like, because like if a chicken shows any sign of weakness, the others will just like start plucking all of its feathers off.
Yeah.
And like that is definitely Reddit. It's like, you are not a Marxist? Prepare to be skinned alive.
And they're always talking about cocks for some reason.
You don't support baby fur? That's a paddling. Yeah, it's just the incredible, like just complete brainlessness of it. Just brainless, mindless violence definitely describes Reddit.
Well, also chickens can survive with their heads cut off. So
Yeah,
there you go.
it says a lot about. God, it's like I will hopefully never have to deal with rats and shit again too. Like just across from me down the hall, there is probably enough rat poison to kill a person easily. And when the cats were still here, I had to be really careful about that. And I had to make sure everything was all walled off and there's no way they could get in there. I had to have stuff blocking things. And like the rats, I'm really astonished I've never had rats in the rooms because they can get out from this huge fucking hole from when they had people living down here and they had a dishwasher or something hooked up under this cabinet. There's a giant hole there that they refuse to fucking seal. And the rats are coming out of there. I know because I've killed rats coming out of there. And they can come out of there and they can just come right into the house. Like they're huge, and there's some small ones too. And like I just would be glad to not be living in a literal ghetto shithole for once.
Yeah. There's certain parts like so when I was living I moved to where I'm living now in 2020 or 2019 at the end of 2019, right before the pandemic actually, and. Up until that point, I think it had been probably close going on 3 or 4 years of living in the previous place. That place was legendary for the gas station walks and all this other stuff because I literally didn't have a working toilet. So I had to walk
Oh,
to
yeah,
take a
I
shit.
remember that.
Yeah.
And then the jars of piss dribbling down the side of the house is another story I hold close to my heart.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to think that that's like now going to be deep cuts of our lore. But yeah, like, I just had like a deranged uncle who would just dribble jars of piss down the side of the wall because he didn't want to use the bathroom. I mean, I after a certain point, he actually couldn't. So he had an excuse, but it was totally working fine for the first couple jars. So fucking mental. But like, there's a certain thing that does to a person when you hear the dribbling sound. You just, you're like, oh,
in your mind what it is.
Yeah, you're like, this is actually fucked up, man. I don't want to have to live here. I can't remember. I don't think we ever had rats or anything, but we definitely had just like the people were a worse pest than the fucking actual pests might have been. In many respects. So yeah, that's just.
I mean, just yesterday, this is the other thing I'll be happy too, is because they lock shit down in that place, there should be a lot less of Pajit doing fucking donuts next to my house at 1 and 2 a.m. Just yesterday, we had one of them they live here too. It's not like people just randomly come down here and do it. They live here. They never, ever, ever get in trouble with anyone. They come down here and they just burn rubber. They rev their engines and they just speed race and drag race down here constantly. And like it's right next to my fucking wall here. It is just deafening over and over and over. If I had a gun, I would have gone out and shot them a long time ago. Like it is. They're doing it just to piss people off.
Yeah, I was gonna
And
say.
I've heard people yelling at them before.
What is the
because
motivation? Like, why would they be?
I don't know. Like
They're just
with
mental.
East Indians, they do have a caste system, and they do bring that over with them. So maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe they know each other. I don't know, but I have heard because the other ones have like kids. They have kids out in the street, and I'm absolutely astonished I haven't seen someone die yet. Because there are cars doing like 100 miles an hour down here easily. They just go from 0 to nothing, just holding their brakes and just burning rubber, and then they fly down that road. And just astonished nobody's ended up dead. And have seen dead squirrels though. They could not escape. So yeah, they just keep doing it. Middle of the night, middle of the day, nothing stops them. And it is so fucking annoying. And it is just like it hurts my ears. I have sense of hearing, and it's just I got like these headphones on and everything. I can't even hear myself yelling over this shit. So I hope there's less of that.
Yeah, no kidding.
It would be nice.
I have a feeling they wouldn't be able to get away with that in the environment you're talking about. There's actually an apartment that sounds kind of similar with like all the rules and shit. That there's an apartment complex across from where I do my shift work, and there's a lawyer who will sit on his porch facing the store. And if he'll sit there at like 11:58 or whatever, and if the truck shows, or no, it's at 10:58. If the delivery truck shows up later than 11 o'clock, that's technically past a curfew, and he'll just start calling the store and telling him he's going to sue them and shit. So, like, the curfew only exists because that guy complained a lot as a lawyer or whatever, and like found some obscure law probably. So he's just like sitting there. Instead of a shotgun and a beer, he's got like a fucking mimosa and a legal pad or something, and he's just like ready to fucking bend us over, which is just hilarious. Like the fact that guy actually does that, because like I had to ask. I was like, yeah, why do we even have a curfew? Like, because a lot of the times the truck will miss the curfew and then have to like show up like the early the next morning. We'll have to unload it at like 6 a.m. or something, which can't actually be any better. Like, it's not really that noisy. But if you're complaining about the noise, surely you like, is it really that noisy that you're fine with it waking you up at fucking 6 a.m.? Like, is that a reasonable thing? Anyway, like that happens or whatever, and then things will get unloaded and stuff, and it's like, oh. Yeah, okay. Why do we have this? And then they were like, yeah, there's just this one lawyer who sits on his fucking porch at night. Like, okay, great. I'm glad that's a real thing. So, yeah. Anyway, those places do seem to have rules, and you can't really break them without some kind of punishment, I think. You never know. With any luck, there will be less drag racing or whatever the fuck is going on. That's another... Yeah, there's definitely going to be...
It's all the little things, right?
Yeah, like, there's going to be a unique set of challenges or whatever, like, things that, like... like, one of the things that I remember when I moved in was kind of, like, in a similar position to you, where if you go back to the playthroughs I had when I was in that fucking piss hole area that I was just talking about, it's like... I was able to be absolutely like balls to the wall insane at any hour. So I could stay up to like fucking 4 or 6 a.m. or whatever. I could yell. I could do all these things. And then, I had to be a little bit more measured because when I came here, there's like people who live in the apartment, but there's also people who live above you in the apartment. And like the walls aren't soundproofed or anything. So you start yelling.
Oh, are you in an apartment now?
Yeah, so I'm on like the ground floor, so it's like a house, but there's people on like it's more of a house than an apartment building. It's not an apartment complex. It's like a house with 3 floors.
More like a condo or whatever.
Yeah, I don't even know what the right term would be for it, but basically each floor is it's rented out separately to a different set of people. So it's fairly spacious. Like it has a decent amount of room, but it's because we have like a second floor person. Like for a while, we actually didn't have a second floor person. I could be much louder, but as soon as that second floor gets occupied, you have to like be mindful of them existing. And even
are you using acoustic treatment in your room?
I just have some wall panels, like the foam things.
Oh yeah,
not
I won't be able
crazy.
I won't be able to put anything on the walls here. I don't think.
I just use one of those nano tapes, which apparently don't leave a seam, but I haven't fucking pulled it off yet, so I don't know.
See, I wanted to get like dividers
that
I could just like surround myself with, but they're so fucking expensive. They're crazy. Like the panels themselves are already pretty expensive, but the divider's like $500 a pop. Like fucking what?
Yeah, I don't understand how that's even possible. Like, why would they charge so much for that? That doesn't even make sense to me.
I think it's because they're primarily bought for office spaces, and enterprises are willing to pay insane amounts of money to have pre-built chairs shipped for them in wooden crates. So why wouldn't they pay an insane amount of money for fucking
Holy
items?
shit! Yeah. Well, the top result is $1,367. So.
Yep.
And then yeah,
I think some of those are really expensive because they actually have like some panels inside of them already. I actually have not been able to find really concrete information on this subject at all. It's really annoying.
Yeah, as I'm scrolling down. I mean, I'm on Amazon for for America, so it could be very different. I am seeing some things that are like stand-up desk ones. They clamp.
Yeah, I don't know how effective those are,
Right.
but I'm thinking of like if I can find something I can stand up, I can buy a panel and then just use adhesive on the panel and just stick it to it. Just have that would be like what I put behind the monitor or whatever.
Right.
So
That might be good as like a minor thing for sound absorption, but also maybe hopefully like not letting your voice carry or whatever if you're concerned about that. You did say that the one of the main things that you were surprised about was that they actually had already sound treated the rooms or walls or something.
no, they said the walls were thicker.
Oh,
They're
okay.
2x6s instead of 2x4s.
Right.
That's what I was told. So I did some reading on 2x6s versus 2x4s. I didn't really find anything too useful about it.
Okay.
But it does result in, well, if they're all packed with insulation, then it's actually going to be substantially more insulation in the walls.
Mm-hmm.
So that would
always
directly
helps.
correlate to more sound absorption as a result of that. So again, I only had a very limited sample size of audio at that point, so I couldn't really measure. But if it stays consistent with what I heard, then there shouldn't hopefully be too much noise at all. Really will depend. The other big thing I mentioned is that they forbid smoking and vaping on the premises. So you're hopefully not going to be smelling too much cigarette smoke coming through ventilation or whatever.
Right.
I don't know.
Like for all of the stupid shit that is surrounded by smoking. Smoking is. I know this is like a tangent, but to me it's like it's a crazy sign of how powerful addictions can be, right? Because like let's just break everything down here. So for smokers, right? You've got obviously the immediate thing is that it really fucks up your health. And it's not like up in the air. Like it's pretty sound science. Like we kind of know that this is
dude.
just
Even
totally
secondhand smoking, just inhaling car exhaust or whatever.
Oh yeah,
something like that. Yeah, fucks you up really badly.
Yeah, I mean that's why I've started to have my windows open and my fans going even in like the winter if I can get away with it. Like if it's a cooler night but not super cold. Just doing that because getting fresh air is really important. Like that's
the other thing too.
Yeah.
This room I can't do that because the big window behind me, none of the screens in this fucking house fit. If I have that window open behind me, I get mosquitoes, wasps, probably birds can fit through there, rats could fit through there. And also, that window's really dangerous too. Like I've had to break into here myself a few times. I know how easy it is. So that I never have that open. There's never any air circulation.
Like one of those cases where
all.
you like locked yourself and have to climb in. Or
yes, because my grandmother would be like, "Oh, I have the keys." When you come home, it's like, "Oh, I don't have the keys." I guess I got to force open the window, which was really not that difficult at all. Yeah. So now I have I actually put a lock into there. Just not a very big lock, but just a small little thing that keeps it from opening.
Right.
That you'd have to smash it open to get in. So, but you can do that because they're all single pane windows, so you get all the draft, but none of the actual air circulation.
Great.
Yeah, having fresh air would be nice.
Yeah, and it's like that's super important. But then you also have like, I don't know, like the fact that you not only have the health disadvantages, right, the health penalty of smoking, you have the fact that it's super fucking expensive to buy it. Like it's just the price just keeps going up. I know we're getting inflated, but like in general, it's like,
always going up.
Yeah, it's just going up anyway. And then on top of it, you have the social stigma, and you can't even fucking smoke in like the average place anymore. Like all the laws have been passed. So it's like, think about all the things all the hoops you have to jump through, all the costs you have to pay, financial, social, obviously your health, and then on top of it all, like you still just keep doing it, man. It's like it must be really fucking nice. You know what I mean?
Well, I think like nicotine is supposed to be a relaxant, if I'm not mistaken. A long time for most of my life, I would be like, how could people get into this stuff? It's so awful and so expensive, and everything you just said. But after going through what I've gone through, especially in the last like 4 or 5 years, I actually can really sympathize with people who get into heavy addictions like drugs and alcohol. I can absolutely understand the road it takes to get there. And if I had disposable income, I would be there myself 100%. Because life just gets to a point where you just can't take anything anymore. And you become too apathetic to actually neck yourself. So what ends up happening is for one reason or another, you end up trying this thing that gives you some way to at least it's just by numbing yourself, by burying things. If I could do that 100%, I would. I understand people would absolutely find these things, take these things, and be like, hey, that gets me out of this. I can just be in the clouds and the gutters. Anywhere but here is better. And then you become addicted, not necessarily just to the substance, but to the process of being able to escape. And then, at that point, the health stuff, it doesn't matter anymore. Anything just to forget life. Absolutely, I can understand that. It's, I think it's actually very easy when you've got money, and especially if you've got the right peers around you who introduce you to this stuff or whatever.
Right, that's a big deal.
Absolutely, I absolutely can sympathize with that for sure. I never used to until all this shit started happening, and it was like you can't get away from it in your dreams. You wake up, it's just all over again. You go to sleep feeling pissed off and depressed every day. 100%, I can understand that.
Well, I can understand that it happens in that sense because, like, in general, you don't really see people who are really well adjusted and have a lot going for them and stuff. And, like, I mean, the brain, like, neurochemistry stuff, if that's out of whack and that's the source of your depression, then that makes sense. And, like, then you would have somebody who seems to be doing fine in life but is still miserable for whatever reason. But if you're actually, like, there's a huge distinction between that versus actually there's just like a million things wrong in my life that I either have no control over or haven't been able to fix for whatever reason. It's like, yeah, okay, well, that's a problem that maybe you can attack separately, but it's probably not like a neurochemistry thing. Your life is in a shitty state right now. So, but yeah, like, it is usually, well, I don't know. I was thinking about this when you were explaining the drag racing shit, and I was thinking, like, why the fuck do these people do that? And it's like, it's not really self-destructive behavior, but it's like just stupid behavior. Like, it's there's like a term for it when you just disregard everybody else or whatever, and I'm forgetting what the term is. But it's like you're being an asshole basically, and like when people are being an asshole like that publicly to like the detriment of other people's livelihoods and like just comfort and stuff, it's like, yeah. At that point, you have some, like, you're disaffected in some way, and you're like, disenfranchised, and you're not in a good spot yourself, and that's why you're acting out in this way to some degree. Like, that must be fueling it. Like, I mean, like, because it's not just psychopathy or whatever where you're like doing it for your own personal gain, because you don't fucking get anything out of it. It's literally just destructive and disruptive behavior. So it must be because there's like some unrest, and I do feel like a lot of people these days are not in a good spot, not happy, not like the state of the modern civilization in the West in general has really not gone into a good spot. There's a lot of people who have like a really heavy anxiety about, like, I mean, I guess it's toned down now, but for the first couple months of the like the invasion of the Ukraine, we had excuse me, a lot of people who are like really scared about like the nuclear annihilation. Like, what happens if, like, NATO steps in or whatever, and then everything goes to shit? And, like, technically that could still happen, but, it's totally out of an individual's control. Like, all you can really do is, like, I don't know, try to
I
slowly...
welcome our nuclear hellfire overlords.
All you can really do if you're anxious about that or whatever is, like, you can try to based pill your fellow man and say, like, actually, NATO is doing stupid shit this entire time, and... like, not to justify the invasion per se, but like I understand what exactly is happening at least. Like, don't just fucking think it's like, oh, everything was fine until the fucking Putin nation attacked or whatever. So like, it's a very complicated situation. And so, but obviously, if you say that publicly to too wide an audience, you'll just get totally disavowed as a fucking Russia lover or whatever. So it's just like there's all this ambient stress. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. Even though I'm pretty like stoic about shit like that, where I just ignore stuff that I can't control. I could still recognize the general increase in ambient stress level when that was happening and circulating in the news. And there was like one or two odd cases where I would have like a dream where at the end of the dream there would have been like a nuke goes off or whatever and like annihilates everything. And I was just like, okay, I guess that was a thing that I had. And I would always like, wake up not in a cold sweat, but like, that would be the dramatized movie version of it. So yeah, anyway, what I'm getting at is a lot of people are in a fucked spot for a variety of reasons, and that's just like one example of like how the media can definitely affect that, and like turning your focus away from news like we're not built to accept global responsibility or even global knowledge of how every human in the world is doing, right? And we don't have that yet, but it's getting towards that where we really know, oh yeah, like there's all these bad things happening in all these places. It's like, yeah, well,
fear is like the greatest thing for attention, right? Like the media does that intentionally just to keep you coming for more news.
And there's the rage baiting too, right? The same kind of thing, which maybe is like, the cousin of fear in that sense. It's like, I'm angry about this news versus I'm afraid about this news. So, yeah.
Like the war for me, it had no effect on me whatsoever. It's just like, oh, slabs are shooting slabs.
Right.
Like someone I talked to, they had relatives or associates in there, and they were worried about it.
Right, yeah. And that makes sense because you have a real-world root, right? Like, you've got something that's actually related to your existence in that area. So,
for me, it's like, wow, America's a really shitty place. They're responsible for this, and it's really sad that a lot of people who otherwise had nothing to do with this and wanted nothing to do with this are now dragged into this.
Yeah.
And I can understand Putin's perspective, and it all makes sense as far as I'm concerned. But, like it doesn't affect me at all other than the inflation. Like what bothers me is that Canada feels the need to take part in all these absolutely pointless, toothless sanctions that deal absolutely no damage to Russia whatsoever, as none of it has anything to do with this at all. The only thing that's happening is it's driving us further into depression, destroying our already non-existent economy, and making the living conditions for every other person except for Trudeau and his cabinet live a much more miserable life. Like, it was bad enough with COVID and everything else with these meaningless restrictions that didn't do anything. Dude, I just watched two people over the age of 80 go through COVID, and it was like a flu. Wow, golly.
Yeah.
Like, pneumonia is so much worse. So much worse. It was just dreadfully bad. And they still got through that without too many issues. I just watch our country go further to shit, and my living conditions get hit by this. That's what bothers me more than anything else, is like, mind your own fucking business.
Yeah.
And maybe the war wouldn't have happened to begin with. And, you can get onto the stupid conspiracy theories or whatever, which may be true, may not be true, whatever. The bottom line is my life is more miserable because my leader wants to look good on fucking social media instead of actually give a shit about his country. That's what bothers me the most. Because I know it's just going to keep getting worse.
And like the rhetoric and narratives around this is like, oh yeah, the American people or Canadian people or whatever will have to make sacrifices because of the situation. And it's like, why though?
We want to be popular.
Like why? And also on top of it, like, the most recent hilarious example of this was Macron, the French president, was on a news broadcast saying basically the same shit. Like, French people are going to have to make sacrifices, talking about like all the economic issues, the sanctions, etc. And like the state of the economy with all the inflation and all this other stuff. While he's giving this lecture, he's wearing like a designer watch worth like 10 grand or whatever the fuck. And he like has to like put his hands underneath the desk and like unbuckle it and put it in a pocket or something like while he's giving the lecture. So then he comes back up and like is no longer on his wrist anymore. It's like, oh yeah, did you remember that as you're telling people that they maybe have to buy less food? You've got this fucking watch worth people's salaries, like, or whatever however much money it was. Like, absolutely insane. So
well, I mean, it's the same thing like with Blizzard. Like, anytime Blizzard opens their mouth about anything, it's clear that they're just completely and entirely detached from reality.
Yes, yeah.
Blizzard is a business. Politics are a business.
Yeah.
That's as much as you need to know about them.
Yeah. I mean, it's the main reason why, like, I can't remember if I said this in the last episode, but my brother had a really good way of putting it in a, he's not necessarily a super deep thinker about video games, but he subscribes to our sort of general philosophy of like a lot of games right now are really bad, and like a lot of the games aren't really games. They don't really focus on the game part. And I was posting some screenshots of patch notes from various games that included stuff like fixed a bug where an enemy wouldn't retaliate by it when you attacked it, or like something absolutely insane. Like, how the fuck does that even happen, right? And we've had some doozies in our own context of CMBW, but that's a mod, and it's not. People aren't really paying for it in the same way. Like, that's not happening, right? We get a little bit of crowdfunding support, but that's mostly towards like our new games. Basically, is sort of the conceit anyway. And the idea anyway behind the game's having this, like, I sent these screenshots to him, and he just replies, the first thing I would do if I made a game is play my game.
Yeah.
It's like, like, I don't know how these things get past people. It's like they're not actually playing the game. So yeah, they're not even grounded in the thing that they're allegedly working really hard on, Doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, it's really crazy. I mean, that's the same with most businesses, right?
Yeah.
Like, it used to be a lot different, but now we offshore everything. Anyways, like, we offshore our politics, we offshore our production, we offshore our support. Just the other day, I had to deal with a credit card company. My grandmother called me up and of course, it's an East Indian, because every single company in Canada outsources to India, and they don't speak a word of fucking English. It sounds vaguely like English, but without fail, you will have to ask them 4 or 5 times to repeat themselves, and they will get frustrated. And maybe they're really legitimately trying to do a good job and they're trying to help you, but you just can't fucking understand them. And this is the most important part, or should be the most important part of any of these businesses, is customer support.
Yeah.
The whole point of credit cards and everything related is that people have something that you get money out of. They're making you money. You want them to keep making you money, so you got to support them when they have any problems with it, right? Like, that's the whole point. Otherwise, you lose your customers. But for years and years and years, we would rather just outsource our customers to support to people who are not native language speakers of the people in the fucking country we're operating in. This doesn't make any sense.
No.
She's like, it's a French company. Was she French? I'm like she doesn't recognize the accent. And I'm like, no. Like, French I could understand if it was a French company. Hey, it makes sense. I talked to Ricky. I would understand it. No, that never happens. It's always India. And it's so, like, that's local ones too, like McDonald's, Burger King, whatever. Their tellers are all East Indian. I mean, it's an East Indian town, whatever. But there's still a sizable chunk of English-speaking population here. There is a number of East Indians here who are well-adjusted, who speak very clear and ideal English. The guys who deliver my pizza or whatever, delivery guys, they always have good English. Even if they're obviously got an accent or whatever, they speak slowly. They're well acclimated. I understand them perfectly. The people who are doing the speaking jobs, without fail, will always be terrible. There's just no standards in anything, because the people in charge just don't give a fuck. It's cheaper.
Well, so you'll get that problem, but then you'll get another, like, parallel problem, which is when you have a situation where somebody in, like, a higher up sort of like managerial position who's not working on the ground with whoever's like their subordinates or whatever makes a change to something, and it doesn't make any sense at all, and it like just causes stupid shit, or like just decides to implement some policy or whatever, and they just take it into a different direction. Like, this is one of the main reasons, I guarantee you, why, like, in the sense of like programming, where they have these like ethics.
Well, this
like,
is the main cause of the stupid patch notes you're talking about.
Yeah.
You see that all the time with like World of Warcraft and shit. Is the patches are just absolutely asinine.
Yeah.
And it's because nobody actually plays their own fucking game or even knows how it works.
Or if they do, they're part of the testing QA department, and this is a fucking funny crossroads, okay? But Necron was doing testing QA for the mobile version of League of Legends, okay?
Oh, and no wonder why he went off the deep end.
When he submitted bug reports, their response was often, "We don't have the budget to fix that." Which is like, what?
What?
How is that even possible? Like, fixing that is not within budget, was like the quote or whatever.
What the fuck?
So, like, that can happen where basically the QA guys get totally stonewalled out of.
Why
being
are they
able to
even
do their
paying
job.
him to QA?
Yeah.
Presumably they were paying him.
Yeah, as far as
If
I
they're
know.
not even do anything with what he reports.
I mean,
That's just
if he reported a
fucking
bug with
insane.
his skin, it would get fixed. But if it was with the game, now.
Wow. Well, I mean, that is kind of Epic's approach to everything, really.
Yeah, fucking makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
At least now they can budget it by like mining your fucking voice conversations if you're stupid enough to use their voice thing.
Yeah. Well, and then Discord updated their terms of service too, didn't they? For that, I can't remember.
Oh, they always had that. They probably just tried to absolve more responsibility from future lawsuits because their founder was already brought to court for previous trust issues like that.
Yeah.
So Discord already has a precedent of being just complete cancer. Anybody who uses Discord to transfer sensitive information is a fucking moron, which is precisely why there are images floating around of people in fucking NATO rooms or whatever using Discord chat. I'm sure it's Photoshop, but I could still believe it.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. President. I'm only on Discord. You're gonna have to have me there.
Well, I believe it. I absolutely believe it. I've heard of like Middle Eastern terrorist groups using World of Warcraft for their chat.
Yeah.
I've heard of it. It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, you can just make burner accounts on it, so.
Well, that's not exactly an encrypted source, but I guess it's funny enough to be.
I mean, it's crypted by the sense that Blizzard is just so woefully incompetent that they would never. They don't even have any way to track. Like they have they've had issues with bots in their game. Final Fantasy 14 is the exact same way. They have bots that teleport around the maps, just mining all over the place.
Yeah.
The game is supposed to have like panic checks, but I've even posted pictures of the bots having bodies floating in the air making their URLs, which was fucking hilarious, by the way. And yet the bots, you can get disconnected in that game for landing on ledges a certain way because that triggers a panic check. But to this day, all those games still have bots teleporting around mining all the nodes.
It's just some cat and
so
mouse
it's like,
play,
how are you going to, like, they don't have actual human hands moderating anything. Like, it would be enough to have a guy with a GM account that gives him a special character that can just zip around the map invisible on his own and just look at resource nodes. You see bots teleporting there, right click them, ban account. Like, it's the easiest shit to do.
Yeah.
You don't even have to pay them that much for it. People probably like do that on off time, even for free in many cases, to keep the game healthier. But like they don't. Yeah. There is no actual human interaction in any of these systems at all. No. That's also why people have problems with YouTube and everything related, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You can just mass flag shit and there's no human oversight.
Especially for a small channel or whatever. Good luck.
No.
It was
well,
funny
even for big
that.
channels.
Yeah.
Like it happened to Rakita Law, for example.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It'll happen to big channels. They have a partner that they go to when something happens. There is actual no human interaction prior to that point.
Yes. Yeah. Well, they'll say manually reviewed, but it's like some dude smashing the button instead of working or whatever, if it's anything at all. So, yeah. Good luck with that one. I think that when you're considering how the state of the affairs for a lot of these games are, like you were talking about the Final Fantasy stuff, and all I could think of was, if you guys made a game instead of a grind fest, then people wouldn't bot it in the same way. So you
get bots
here.
Just about it, dude. You get bots for boosting ladder in fucking League.
Well, and that
people
will still
selling
happen.
Shit like that.
I just can't, like, if the game didn't require you to spend like hours and hours and hours grinding materials, then you probably people would bot, even if they didn't bot for boosting in League, they would bot for unlocking the accounts, right? Unlocking the champions through the free currency or whatever, and stuff like that, right? Because it's not there by default. So
I don't think those systems work really that well at all. I mean, on one hand, you can have materials to make shit, but getting them shouldn't be time gated and stupid to the point that non-human interaction becomes viable.
Oh yeah,
right. Like that's part of the problem too. Is it's not just that you need a grind; it's the kind of grind that you need. Like in World of Warcraft, what they started doing in Warlords of Draenor and Mists of Pandaria is they started introducing drops per hour, where it's not just a low chance to drop something, it's only so many can drop within a given time frame. And then as far as I have heard or otherwise known, for everything in the world, they started doing that. So Like,
That sounds
you
horrible.
reach the point where it's like it is very, very pointless for a human to actually interact with the system. Guild Wars 2 also does this. Guild Wars 2 implemented a system where if you repeatedly kill the same kinds of monsters, they stop dropping loot. And lo and behold, over half the game is undead. Lo and behold, all the high-end materials come off of undead. You got to grind undead to get your materials. That was what threw me off of that game right away. I used to do PvP in that game, World versus World, but when I wanted to get materials for shit, it was like, yeah, you have this stupid anti-grind system in there, and it's like, yep, I'm done.
I just can't imagine. Like, so the thing that gets me, right, is that, you know, you're talking about the kind of grind being basically reserved only for AI at this point, like bots or whatever.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's like they try to make it so you can't just grind with a bot or whatever. But this is like a bot doesn't care about these systems.
Yes.
That's why bots exist, is so that humans don't have to deal with annoyances and arbitrary restrictions and time gating. They just turn on a robot and they go do something productive with their life instead.
Yeah.
This is basically what bots are designed for.
Yes.
But again, like these developers, they don't have any interaction with the game whatsoever on their own. So of course this is what they're going to think. They read about it in fucking Reddit or something.
It reminds me of a conversation recently, or a point recently. So I was asking for feedback on the AI in CMBW, and Rainaril on the Discord server had said that he feels like one of the things that he was had a gripe with was the psionic storm casting, because the AI was really, really good with it, right? And
I actually haven't even seen that yet.
yeah, well, it is pretty good. Like when I see it in action, it's not bad at all. But the problem is that the ability is not. Basically, when I see something like that, and I see the AI basically because of the fact that they can push a button as soon as it's available, and you know they've got improved target selection, so that part is actually a skill. But a lot of it is just like godlike APM and micromanaging, right?
Meanwhile, you have me, and it's like I see units underneath Sonic Storm, and they just take no damage from it. And I'm like, what the fuck is that shit?
Yeah.
That happened to me so much against Shambler in that one game is driving me crazy.
Yeah,
I didn't understand why the one Gorgon was taking 10 hits because I couldn't see its health.
Right.
But apparently in your cast, it's like, oh, it's just not taking damage. I'm like, well, that's fucking stupid.
Well, there's no there's like to the right part of the psionic storm doesn't deal damage anymore for some reason. Only the left half does, and I don't know why. I haven't been able to figure that one out.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I didn't change the splash field or anything, so.
But with the AI, they can just spam so many of them. I guess it just doesn't make a difference.
Yeah. So anyway, the point I was gonna get at with that is like, okay, well, maybe the ability itself isn't super interesting if the AI can do it with no, like, just purely good, right? Like a general heuristic, and this isn't true always, because maybe you will get to a point where you can get really good target selection, really good unit positioning, you can test all of these skills, and the AI can do like all of those things while also being really good at the multitasking part and you know, picking the right targets and etc. So maybe eventually we could have AI that like positions their casters really well and then uses them. And then this would like diffuse this argument. But as a general initial heuristic, it feels like it's a really sound idea that if your AI is just absolutely owning people with these kinds of abilities, that maybe the abilities could get revised in some way to be more interesting. Because like maybe it's not super interesting to just push a button as soon as you can, basically on cooldown, right? And getting like a point and click reward. You know, something that Veek suggested a while back was maybe most recently actually, he said it would be cool if it did less damage but took like stayed around a lot longer, so it would actually be more like area denial.
Oh yeah, kind of like the Zeus's storms and AO. I designed them like that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because they just kind of appeared in a huge carpet and then they could move around. Well, it felt like it was too strong if they did a lot of upfront damage.
Right.
And more interesting if they acted like zoning tools.
Right. And so like something like that would work.
Sonic Storm is weird in Cosmonarchy Brood War because the scope of health differences between units is a lot larger. And what that means is that if you want it to actually be strong, it has to deal a lot of damage. But then you're going to enter a lot of cases, even just against ground units, much less air units, where it's going to start vaporizing anything that's the same or lower tier.
Yeah.
But against higher tier, it might be like numerically balanced. So you just kind of enter this really uncomfortable spot with it.
Well, I think the idea that I have is that it would be a channel and that you'd also be able to relocate it. and so the Cantabus would be grounded while channeling it. So that would obviously
Kind of like
be,
Blizzard in Warcraft 3, I guess.
You can't relocate Blizzard though. I think you're thinking
No.
of Tornado, maybe.
So you're thinking of making it like a unit.
Yeah, you would be able to move it around with the Cantabus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, the easier implementation in Brood War
Depends
would
on
be,
how you implement it, because it could turn into a really major APM sink.
right.
Like
yeah.
even positioning Lanifix can be a little annoying, because when you click on units, they kind of may not like hug them, but you need them to hug them.
Right.
So sometimes the ability usage can be a little awkward.
And then you have to hold pause to make them not flee.
Yes.
Right? I think
Which may
just
make them
making it
shoot
so that
across
they
the
don't
map.
flee when it's activated will be enough for that, so that they don't fuck off while it's activated. But there's also, there's like a bunch of silly things we have to fix, like the fucking attack priority thing. Like, I have a command
that's a
center
really
target.
awkward
I
one.
won't change my target now that I'm being attacked by a defender. Yeah.
In that 1v2 where Shambler had that came out of that 2v2, in one of his early attacks with all the units that goes up the ramp and they just die en masse because they're like locked onto something behind them.
Yeah.
So they're not shooting and stuff in the ledge. When I watched that in game, I was just literally cringing out of my skin. I expected there to be an ocean of salt, but I don't think he actually saw that happen.
He wasn't
But I
looking
saw
for
it happen, and it was agonizing because he absolutely should have taken that ramp, but all of his
Right.
shit died for nothing.
Absolutely barbaric.
It was disgusting.
But that's the thing, is we have these situations where you can get, like, I don't know, despite all of the bugs, I've felt like the general vibe I get after is that, like, especially now that the ion cannons are healthier, which we didn't really get to demo too much in Fraudarchy. But
There was that 3v3. I actually wanted to cast it, but I don't think anybody has a replay. I meant to save the replay, but then I think I got interrupted immediately after it. So when I had to go AFK.
Oh, okay.
And I forgot to save it as a result, and now I don't think I have it anymore.
Well, there was a different one on Mouth of Bethala where you were fucking building a base behind the beaver.
Yeah.
Then when you left, I don't know if you didn't say anything in Discord, and you were just gone for a while. So that was the one you had to AFK in, I think.
There was several AFKs throughout that.
Oh,
The
okay.
one that you had me jump in to cast over, I was actually AFK right before I sat down.
Yeah. You
So,
came back and in the middle of that. So
There was a few like that. That game was dumb. I felt like that if you guys did not scout, like I really debated upgrading those defenses. I think that's what gave me away. But I felt like if I'd actually taken like 3 or 4 bases, I might have been able to like spring a bunch of Mulisks on you and kill a ton of your workers. I probably still wouldn't win, but it probably would be really funny to actually deal a lot of damage after that. But I had like no resources at all. It took so long to save for tier 2.
yeah.
So
Well,
by the
you
time I
saw
hit tier 2, it was really bad.
the thing is, when you hit tier 2, eventually the penny dropped that you didn't have the structure in your base that was
Yeah.
behind the beaver, right?
Because you would see the upgraded defenses,
Yeah.
and that would give it away. But I needed that base to last as long as possible.
Right.
So there was not really like an easy way for that. Because now you were like Madrigal dropping me, and I was like, yeah, this base is gonna die really soon. And then
Well, the other
had
thing
to
that
hold
was
out.
fucked up was like you weren't GGing, you were staying in the game, and I was like, wait,
Yeah.
why is he doing this when we're at tier 2 and we're like putting phalanxes over there and stuff? So I started like moving around the map.
Yeah.
I also had like preemptively built air defenses in my base because I was worried you would go
I
for
thought
an
there
air.
might be that. Like when I
Yeah.
saw you building towers outside, I was like, oh, you might have already actually built shit in your base too.
Yeah. So, but like, even though that's a stupid game, it's still like, I don't know. There's something neat about the way that the project is shaped up where people can kind of do wacky stuff, and maybe they don't get away with it, maybe they do get away with it, but like, I guess, since we're sort of coming to the end of an arc with you moving on to a new place, like, you've obviously spent a decent amount of time in the last couple of months with the project. So do you have any like final thoughts on it, or like takeaways based on your current understanding and the time you spent? Like anything in particular that you think is like a really glaring issue besides like obviously like some of the bugs we've discussed and the desyncs and stuff? Like anything that like with the project's design itself that's intentional that you can interface with? And then do you have any like more positive takeaways or things that you enjoyed about it?
Well, I think the game definitely has a lot of potential in team stuff in particular. I think you're right when you were saying that the team stuff generally also makes for more interesting casting.
Yes.
At least with the current player pool. But obviously the desyncs are really bad for that. But it was kind of funny because you can't, obviously the increased options allow you to do stupid shit. Like the only reason I was able to hold it for so long was because of tier 2 defense. You couldn't do that in StarCraft 1, that's for sure. like it just generally like that's the impression I get is that there is much more flat like the choices offer definitely much more flexibility in what you can do, and that in general, like in particular for team games, I think that leads to it being more interesting. Most games that are involving terrain almost always degrade into ion cannons at this point. We had to deal with that in one of our 2v2s a while ago, and then there was the game that Chandler and I played against Kian and Beaver. I think that even if there wasn't ion cannons in that case, I would have eventually probably taken that game anyways, just because of the position I was in. I would have built, I was at the very end of the game, I was building a whole ton of nanite assemblies. So if I wasn't going to proxy him with ion cannons, I probably would have gone actually for Iron Foundry instead, or I would have just stuck to the nanite assemblies, and there would have been Hippogriffs and Phoboses over there instead. So it kind of would have been just similar, but like there's like in normal StarCraft, the most you really get that's similar to that kind of a setup is going to be like a tank push, and the responses to that, of course, because of very limited tech and stuff like that, it's also going to be very kind of predictable. So you also like the spells in Brood War are just really uninteresting in general. Like Stasis Field is just way too fucking strong, and Plague is just really stupid, and Dark Swarm is, I mean, it's a key thing for ZVT in particular, but it just always feels really stupid. Like these binary interactions, Irradiate is just not fun to play against at all, especially as Zerg, but even just in general, whenever it actually gets used against your biological units, it's just like, oh, I guess these units are dead now, LMAO.
Well, look at the Defiler. Like, the fact that
Lockdown is dumb.
It makes units immortal, and it plagues other units to 1 HP. Like, oh, okay, all right. And they're both point and click, you know?
Yeah. Point and click abilities just take so much from the game. You just, like, even Warcraft 3 would be a lot better of a game if heroes didn't exist, and if a lot of the spells didn't exist. Like, there's a reason why all the pro games are fucking Night Elves. It's because Druids of the Talon literally permanently CC shit. And Entangle is stupidly strong, and, you know, and then you have the,
there's Mana Burn.
The Shadow Meld or whatever it is too, which is stupid as hell. And like the way that the games play is just so uninteresting. It's just uninteresting to play and tedious and uninteresting to watch. Because basically the game is solved, right? And like spell usage has always been a bane for RTSs. It's always been something that in all of its implementations I've ever seen has been bad. So we have spells within CMBW, and some of them are really strong, like particularly Apostles and Reviving. But I mean, Reviving is still better than permanently CCing units. Yeah. CC is just such an uninteresting thing. It's stupidly strong in every context. It's always going to be the best choice, and when it happens, it's like, oh wow, I guess you can't do anything anymore. Like it's just not fun. Like it's just not fun ideas.
Well, especially if the CC is point and click. Like the Maelstrom has a projectile now, so it's still stunning people. But
I had to actually aim it to use it to stop your fucking Ahmeds and shit. So, you know, there was at least some interactivity in that regard.
Oh, the other thing I'm planning on doing for that, by the way, is making it so that it only stuns things it passes through, so that you actually, because like right now it's kind of weird to know where it's actually going to detonate, right? Whereas now if the projectile is the stun field or whatever, then okay, now suddenly it's a lot more interesting in that respect, and a lot more like discernible. You can understand it, right? So that's something I'm planning on doing, and then maybe it'll still have the explosion at the end, but for the most part, it'll just be like, okay, I need to hit units with this, and maybe the projectile will increase in size as a result.
Yeah, it's like you got to be able to interact with shit, and most of these spells are just you don't interact with them, and it's just boring. Like all Warcraft 3, all the caster units are just so boring. They don't do anything interesting. There's nothing striking about them.
Well, and so they have to have these auto casts too, which is just like, what do you?
Yeah, and then the auto casting shit is like, these are a chore to use, but we still want to have them, so we're gonna make them auto. Like, why not just at least make them interesting then? Like, and then StarCraft 2 is so much worse with fucking feedback and snipe and shit. It's just like at the absolute best of times, it's just tedious and annoying. But then it has to exist because that's how we balance. Why don't you balance your fucking game now?
Well, you know how.
Oh wait, you can't do that because fucking Infestors and Widow Mines have been sore spots forever.
Yeah.
And then fucking Ravens too. Like Ravens were an interesting unit. Defense drones were definitely too strong. But they were in an interesting unit conceptually, and the spells that they did were interesting. So, of course, those were the units they gutted. And
Well,
Seeker Missile was obviously too strong, but just make it attackable like I did, and suddenly it's interactive again. Like
yeah.
just changing the way that you approach the abilities and things like that can do a lot for making them much more healthy, not just for the balance, but for the longevity of the game. It's just like
Yes.
it's honestly just really basic shit.
I think that you think about like there is another problem with drawing examples from anything like StarCraft 2 is that they just keep fucking changing everything all the time,
Yeah.
and oftentimes not to fix the actual problem. Of course, it's a bandage fix. At
I gotta go.
best.
Okay, 1 second.
Okay. Yes, we were talking about spells in StarCraft 2 and how they're dumb. Um, this will probably have to be one of the last points or whatever because I have to hop off here.
I have to go. Yeah.
So we're both on a timetable. But my initial sort of takeaway from the state of CMBW right now is like there are definitely more pain points in the balance. Like you mentioned the Apostle. The corpse reclamation stuff, it just needs another sort of like design pass to get to a good spot. It's maybe weird for some people who aren't realizing the difference between StarCraft 2 and CMBW as products, being that CMBW isn't really a product. It's just it's a project, and it's definitely got a lot of interesting ideas, and I'm trying to push it forward and make it better and stuff, but a lot of it is experimental. A lot of it is like showing me the way that will actually take me to the promised land of the RTS and take everybody else with me as well. That's the ideal situation anyway. But like StarCraft 2 obviously is supposed to be just like, the brilliant minds at Blizzard making a sequel to Brood War, the best RTS. Yeah, like we'll see how that fucking worked out for you. So the fact that they have all these changes, yes, CMBW also has all these revisions, but like we're focusing on, do we know the answer to, like, do we know how to implement this well? Like, you were on record saying some of the stuff that we're trying really hard to balance. Maybe it's up in the air if it's even possible to balance? Like, we're trying to find answers to these questions. Like, if it is possible to balance, how do you do it, right? And
only one way to know.
You're right, and you have to actually really mess around with it. And unfortunately, that is going to cause some interactions where some people are like, "Wow, this is so busted, and I hate it, and it's salty, and blah blah blah." But like, as long as they understand what they're in for, like hopefully the lows in those moments are outpaced by the highs, and even the mids. Like the basic experience you have playing it is hopefully a higher quality than other things. And I think, maybe it's not much maybe you're bragging about being the smartest retarded kid, but like CMBW is probably the best RTS experience that most people have had. It's certainly the best one I've had. I can, speak for myself. And it's like, you might be a little bit different because you've obviously worked on your own projects that other people haven't had firsthand experience with in the same way. Like obviously the Apex projects in StarCraft 2 and stuff. But, for me, it's like, we've got something here. And like you said earlier, like the project has a lot of potential at the very least. And that seems quite inarguable. And so,
I think you're on the right path at least. Right?
Yeah, it's funny to see now that I've been, like people have been posting some stuff, and I've been posting some stuff with the old heads in the Brood War sections of the internet, and it's like the reactions there are either, "Wow, I'd really like this feature," or like the more rare case is like, "This would ruin the fucking game, and you're an idiot. Don't post this here." It's like, okay. So like sometimes you get some interesting reactions, some funny little anecdotes from people. But yeah, it's just like really funny to me that we've even seen some people start to realize like, oh, maybe grid hotkeys are superior once you learn them. Like you and Kian have been learning them. I think maybe a few other people, Milestone as well. And then, I'm still waiting for people to start getting their hands over accustomed to quick casting, the fast ability targeting and stuff. Like basically, we have this thing where you don't need to confirm your target. So you just you say like you're trying to attack move. You don't have to left click on with your cursor after hitting the A key, right, or the E key as it is if you're using grid hotkeys. And as a result of that, it like makes actions a lot snappier, and that's definitely made my EPM go up because of the fact that I don't have to do that. But it's also, as DF termed it, expert mode, because you do need to know what you're doing. Like you have less room for error, and if you fuck something up, it might like drain your APM and focus to like fix it afterwards. Like, oh, I tried to build a building here, but and there's a separate field for quick building placement, which some people may or may not decide to use, but. It's like stuff like that is just like, you'd never dream of having things like that in Brood War as a modder. And yet we have been able to patch in these like interesting UI features and UX features and stuff. And obviously improve a couple of other things like the pathing and the fucking, building a structure without your workers blocking it or whatever the fuck. Like I'm trying to defend my mineral line with a watchdog or something.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, and I guess there's also all that. There's all the fucking renames we've done. Like I don't know how people feel about those in retrospect, but it seems like I mean, for what the graphical representations of the units slowly being chipped away at, like the new scribe model and stuff, is a bigger deal. But even them being called something different is kind of like a hint that, hey, this is not really like the Maverick does behave differently than the Marine. It's subtle, but they don't have to be researched and upgraded to get their range and their stim pack, and they obviously stim pack deals less damage to them. And then there's the whole armor and armor pen situation. So the whole context within which their numbers exist is like very different, right? So just knowing that that's actually a different thing, I mean, it gives a little bit more identity to the unit. Marine wasn't a terrible name, but it was also not a very inspired one. So it's kind of like that middle ground. It's like when you get into the really stupid names like Lurker and shit. It's like when people have mixed feelings about my Zerg naming.
At least it wasn't House or Biter.
Why did he name it House?
I think that he just, as far as I know, he is a very rich person. I think he just got deep into the really good ganja.
Okay.
And then he was like, I'm going to make something sort of like a campaign. Oh, that's like the house. I'm going to call it a house.
Yeah, and wasn't it
That's
like mansion or something? I can't remember what it was. Like the tier ups were mansion or something. Stupid.
Like if you don't know what to call it, why not just leave it what it was already called?
Well, no, because like his whole conceit is that the Terrans you're playing as are the ones who are naming these things by their call
But they
sign.
Wouldn't name them that way.
Yeah, they wouldn't name the
You
Hydra.
have scientific precedents across thousands of years of civilization to pull upon.
No.
And instead you just choose to pull shit out of your own ass.
Listen, bro, the Hydralis den is called a toaster.
You're not. No.
Yeah, that's true.
No.
Yeah.
No. God, no. Fuck, no. God.
There's also Bleeder. I don't remember what that was, but it was a real thing.
I don't like... Maybe I have a slight bit of bias because I know a guy who does fucking some kind of management for this shit, and I see some of this, but seriously, just like read a book or something. Like there are... You got people, foreign invaders naming stuff that belongs to a nation that they don't know the language of, so they just call it whatever the hell. You got scientific instances of people naming shit. Just choose one and go off of that style. Like they're not. No.
Toaster is reserved as a name for computer players in CMBW anyway, so he's actually copyright infringing.
Yeah.
He should be banned.
I think like almost all the robotic factions and fucking Apex, the player characters refer to as toasters at this point. It caught on early and it just never let go.
Yeah, why not? Makes sense. Well, hopefully our toasters will still be operational come the move. And maybe within the next couple of days, we'll hear back. We'll do a triumphant return, episode 70, 30 away from 100, which is 3 digits. So there's some threes all over the place. And yeah, dude, I'm like I said, I'm hopefully optimistic, tentatively optimistic that once you're through the fucking eye of the storm, as it were, you're going to come out the other end feeling you're like, oh shit, I can relax and I can sit on a porch with a shotgun and a beer and I can do all this other stuff. And yeah, at the same time, maybe you'll come back online, and Unreal will also be fixed, so that would be nice. And you can do some stuff.
Would be nice to be able to tackle some of that stuff, because if things went well, then I would like to have a second voyage towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
The Swedishman, I guess, fired up a instance of Windows 10 or something and was giving me some feedback and
interesting.
Some shit. And I was like, yeah, I actually know about most of this stuff. And I was saying it would be nice if I could like just build a sub patch that just fixes some of the more major bugs and some of the performance.
And does some of the changes you made mechanistically, right? Like
it'll definitely play a lot different. Just none of the new zones or anything or the units I was working on. Just kind of like adjusting what was already there, just as an interim for the time being. There is some I want to fix the loading and the master volume in it. For some reason, it doesn't work in some of the other stuff that I know about before that. But it's something I might consider depending on what happens. So.
All right. Well, I look forward to that if it does end up happening, and if it doesn't, then Second Voyage comes later. That's fine by me too. It'll be interesting to see it all. I know you were looking to do like a tier 2 zone and stuff, so
Yeah.
that'll definitely be neat. Because like you posted something that I missed the context of and thought was like a boss battle or some sort of like one of those duels from like some of the DMC games where it was like really involved, and you were like, "Nah, this is like a Zergling." I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, that's the base tier 2 unit that I
Yeah.
was starting to work on. So a lot of the systems I was adding recently were for that unit that it just doesn't actually use yet. So
Right. Yeah. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Because like I'm always interested when people have concepts and ideas that just by the nature of them, like the scale or the implied scale or whatever, like it's sort of like if you fight an enemy and you're like, wow, that was a really tough boss, and then actually like somehow you find out that actually that wasn't a boss, that was a normal unit, and you have to fight like a bunch of them. Like the way that makes you recontextualize the engagement is really interesting, and that's like one of the most powerful moments you can really have in a game, I think, is when you're realizing that you need to level up your shit because like you're expected to face multiple of that thing that was really really difficult for you to beat by itself. That can be really powerful as an idea. And like the same idea is like, when I tell people, yeah, my eventual golden RTS game that I want to work on in the future is going to have 20 races. People are like, what the fuck? And then I add on like, well, that's not all. Each race is going to have 100 units. What the fuck? Like people will have, they'll definitely be like, holy shit, like how's that even possible? Like they can't even conceive of it. And that can be like when you expand people's horizons, Mesk, it does feel pretty nice. So it's definitely one of the most powerful things you can have in a game. So definitely looking forward to having my horizons expanded.
you open your lower to the higher.
Lower to the higher, and
Okay.
that's it. I think smoke weed.
Yeah. I don't got anything else to add to that. I am, however, very sore. So things are going to get harder from here on for sure.
Hard enough man. Oh, I dropped the hard enough man on a recent CS:GO talk show, so you'll enjoy that, knowing that I'm spreading the gospel. So there's at least that.
Are you the hardest man in Britain?
Yeah, well, the two people I was talking to were from Britain, so it actually worked.
Oh, they might actually be aware of that show then,
Maybe.
or at least the clip from it.
All right. Well, let's spread the awareness, and let's continue this in another dimension.
Yep. So until next time.
You